DENDERA light bulb of ancient Egypt, discovery of a higher technology civilization. Now we know that the ancient pyramids had beautiful hieroglyphs and paintings inside, and yet there was no smudge of any candle smoke on them, which means that how did they paint all these things in there? Obviously they had some kind of a power that was not smudging the paint in the atmosphere. Hence, they say that they must have had electricity. Now, you may have heard or read somewhere the phrase that where people stop talking, the stones speak. This is a completely true meaning, which has to do with all forms and types of archaeological finds, which show us things and in facts that change what we believe until now, that conventional history wanted us to believe. It seems that we're finding artifacts that show that the ancients had very advanced technology. Murals and lithographs are a classic and great example, like the ones we find in ancient Egypt. At the bottom of the pyramids, where darkness covers everything, there are high precision designs which have a lot to tell us about the past of the people. We find the DENDERA light bulb images, the finds in the ancient Greek city of DENDERA in Egypt, south of Abydos, are impressive. Even the carvings of the Abydos and the ancient vehicles, flying vehicles, even submarines. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. So we find a lot of unexplained advanced ancient technology. In the basements of the Hathor temple were found lithographs depicting huge lamps powered by cables that end up in huge power supplies or huge batteries made with the help of electrodes in very large jars. These lithographs and murals are many and very detailed. The murals depict people holding light bulbs and light bulbs in their hands or devices with light bulbs. In fact, with some, they illuminate in order to do some work. Beings much smaller, taller, others taller and stronger than the giant, than them, meaning they were giants. Inside the lamps, there are large snakes in wavy lines. The tail of the snake comes out through the lotuses. Some lithographs show multi-lamp systems. In the lithographs, there are other electrical devices, more or less strange, than either some people hold or try to put into operation or have placed on their head. Conventional history and science fail to provide explanations of these mysterious lamps. And it was an ancient Greek city of DENDERA in Egypt. But how did this happen in antiquity? We have to be careful. In rooms without windows, we have engraved and carved subjects without a trace of smoke, even in the cracks in the walls. And we're talking, of course, about tobacco and soot remnants dating to that period, as in later years, researchers, visitors, conservators, and even robbers used torches and oil lamps and candles to get in there and loot the place. Now, after all, this was proved in an article in Practice, since the temples and crypts that were recently opened for exploration, not the slightest trace of tobacco or burning was found. And here we must take into account 2 more factors. No matter how great the artists were who made these lithographs, they could not use such details and colors if they did not have at their disposal rich and steady light for hours. In addition, the use of oil torches or light bulbs and candles would expend large amounts of oxygen and weaken them, hindering their efforts. They would just faint. Now, initially, the explanation of multiple reflective surfaces was given, but it soon proved to be untrue. You see, even the most modern mirrors could not help. That wouldn't be enough light for them to draw these beautiful colors. This due to the rate of absorption of the intensity of the solar radiation, and the large number of required reflectors would not allow the light to reach such depths. So the light through the reflectors reached a maximum of half the distance, and of course, that was dim anyway. But there are also technical difficulties that were overlooked. You would need a set of mirrors, which some craftsmen would have to hold or place constantly, often changing a sharp angle. Thus, a possible carelessness damage could break the chain, plunging everyone into darkness. Finally, they should close only sunny days, where they would choose only sunny days to work, where there would be no clouds or dust or other substances in the atmosphere. It will simply mention that about 400 underground temples and tombs have been meticulously decorated in this manner. 400 underground temples and tombs. Several Egyptologists immediately rushed to downplay the issue as well, emphasizing that these are merely symbolic images from Egyptian mythology. According to them, the pillar in the images represents a symbol of stability and in a way represents the spine of the god Osiris. It still doesn't matter. It still doesn't explain how these beautiful painted images and murals were put down there without any soot and smoke. Now, what people hold on their shoulders is what looks like a cable or a snake-like cable in a lotus leaves, and this symbolizes fertility, they said, is directly related to the floods of the Nile River. Giant creatures holding knives are interpreted as a kind of defensive, protective force. Simple logic usually leads to the truth, though. Things are simple. As long as there were no openings in the pyramids for light to enter at any point, and no traces of smoke and soot were found to justify the use of torches, somehow the ancient Egyptians, or those living in Egypt at the time, could produce light. The most probable way is through electricity, and this is also supported by the ancient batteries that were found there. The batteries consisted of a clay container in which a hollow metal cylinder was placed. A metal rod was inserted into a cylinder without coming into contact with it. Thus, they created two electrodes. Then they filled the container with electrolytic liquid, which created the required voltage at the ends of the electrodes. The difference is that the batteries of Iraq is small, fits in a human palm, while the battery of Egypt is very large. They look like huge jars. Ancient Greek Lucianos writes, and an expert from his work, Lucianos Samosatius, refers to a Syrian temple on the Euphrates in the 2nd century AD, where a statue of a deity was kept. The goddess has an object in her hand. It is a stone with a round shape, which he calls a lamp, and explains how it gets its name thanks to its function. This particular stone shines so brightly all night that it illuminates the whole temple, as would be the case with the use of many oil lamps. During the day, the stone shines less, but retains a strong fiery aspect. Some scientists talked about the existence, knowledge, and use of coal at the time, which could lead to the use of a simple carbon arc lamp, and believe that similar systems existed in different areas of that period. Traces of electricity in the Great Pyramid of Egypt. New images were released from inside the Great Pyramid a little while back. These include electrical terminal components, cables, and wiring diagrams. The existence of cables, connectors, and electrical contacts have not been touched so far by Egyptologists. They don't want to touch that subject whatsoever. How can they explain such advanced technology as electricity? Now, the reference to such a theory can be found in the book Giza Power Plant, Technologies of Ancient Egypt. It was published in 1998. Now scientists are sending robots to explore more data on these areas, looking for clues and evidence that will confirm and consolidate the theory. Now, imagination creates scenarios. If we let our imagination run wild, we could argue that in antiquity there were people or beings with supernatural powers who could produce lights themselves or see absolutely clearly in the dark, but because there is not the slightest indication of this, we do not have any disposition to enter into similar analyses. The only thing we can testify, and which we will always mention, is that no one can know in detail how the ancient ancestors lived, thought, and functioned at all times in every part of the earth. Successful representation today. Some people made identical bulbs, as these things indicated in Egypt, and supplied them with identical batteries similar to those found in Iraq and Egypt. In the Museum of the Modern DENDERA, there is a representation of the ancient lamp, which is put into operation with the ancient batteries. As the relevant videos that prove to be circulating prove, but also as those who visit the museum can see, the whole system works absolutely normally. It's a battery. The battery creates the electricity that lights up the DENDERA light bulb. Some engineers claim that we are dealing with a primitive pipe, the Crookes tube, Crookes. The Crookes tube was for the forerunner of the modern television tube. Now then we have the DENDERA, the ancient city of Egypt. It was located on the right bank of the Nile, on the site of the present-day city of DENDERA, and near the city of Kena, or Kena, Kena, and it was called in ancient Egyptian, Entendero, Enet of the goddess Enet, Endora. The city dates back to the pre-dynastic period, and in the era of the Sixth Dynasty, it was the capital of the prefecture. And in the city there was a temple of Hathor, the goddess of dance, music, and love, which was identified with Aphrodite, of the ancient goddess of love and beauty of Greece. It's considered one of the most well-preserved ancient temples of ancient Egypt and an architectural masterpiece of grace and symmetry. And according to the experts, the original construction of the temple took place during the Fourth Dynasty. The parts that survived, though, date back to the time of Ptolemy, with additions made in the years of Tiberius Caesar. Ptolemy, as we know, was one of Alexander the Great's generals. So that's about 300 BC. And Tiberius Caesar, a little bit after him. Now, the goddess with her husband Eros and her son Ehi, or Har-Sem-Teone, was worshipped there. And after Napoleon's campaign in Egypt in 1798, if I remember correctly, Napoleon, a few videos back, you'll see Napoleon went to Egypt in his campaign, and he was given something by the Egyptian high priest when Napoleon went to the Giza Pyramid, the Great Pyramid. And the high priest, actually was high priest. He wasn't. He was an imam, a Muslim priest, and he said that that Napoleon was the third emperor to come there. The first one was Alexander the Great. The second was Julius Caesar, and the third one was him. And just as the high priest of Egypt gave amulets for victory to Alexander the Great and Caesar, Napoleon Bonaparte was also given an amulet. And he says, this amulet will give you victories in all your campaigns. And that's exactly what happened to Napoleon. He had victories in all his campaigns, but when he lost the amulet in Austria in a fire, he started having defeats one after the other. But let's go back to this. After Napoleon's campaign in Egypt, two representations of zodiac signs were discovered, located on the roof of the temple, in which one can distinguish the Greek signs associated with the Egyptian constellations. One representation refers to the birth of Caesar at 100 BC, and the other in the kingdom of Tiberius, that's 14 to 37 AD. Behind the temple of Hathor, there was a smaller temple dedicated to the Egyptian goddess Isis. I've translated this for you from a Greek article. I hope you found it interesting. Yes, the DENDERA light bulb was for electricity. And they recreated this in the DENDERA Museum, and anyone who goes there or has gone there could see it working. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support.